Another year in the books for the mighty Manly Warringah Seagulls, the pride of the peninsula, which also unfortunately means another year that Paddy G has to come onto the YouTube and talk about how his team still can't win a competition. Now, thankfully, in some respect, there has been a lot of positive vibes and a lot of positive chat around Manly this year. As a young boy who still lives and breathes on the peninsula, it was great to see just a community rally around Manly for the first time, what felt like since our dynasty back at the late 2000s, early 2010s. We sold out 8 of our games at Brookie this year. The other 2 were at Friday 6 p.m. and the weather was not kind to the peninsula. But most notably, a lot of people didn't have Manly doing too well this year. Now, that is obviously the big concern around Tom Trbojevic. There are a lot of questions around Luke Brooks and, of course, Anthony Seibold. So not too much was there for Manly when it came to the optimism in the preseason. I had them top 4, however, so it could be very easy for me to come on here and ride the big positive wave because we did get back into finals for the first time since 2021. But I'm a realist, and if I had Manly top 4 and they finished 6, I guess there's got to be some kind of disappointment there. And obviously, like any fan of any sporting team, you watch your team a lot closer than you do of the games, and I'm no different. If I'm watching Manly, that 2 hours goes a lot longer, and I feel a lot more emotionally invested than if the Tigers are playing the Titans at Saturday 3 p.m. And most of you loyal subscribers and viewers who I love so much dearly, because you don't have to tune in, notice that I tip Manly each and every week. I like to make a joke that they're going to win the comp when they beat teams like the Bulldogs. But in this video, I wanted to do a proper season review, and I'm going to do this for most of the teams this year. I like to have a joke, and we'll obviously have some jokes throughout this video, but I want to keep this one a bit more analytical, and I'm not the greatest rugby league mind because I'm sitting here in my bedroom recording this video. You have Bloke in the Bar, you have Levels, you have literally any program Fox League or Channel 9 have with current and former legends of the game. So if you want a deep analysis, you can go there, but this is just going to be from a layman, a guy who has his membership, goes to most of the games at Brookie this year. I went to Penrith, I went to Brisbane. I love my team, I love my Manly Seagulls more than I love most things in this life, which is both cute in some respects, I guess, but also kind of embarrassing. But I've got some pros, I've got some cons, I've got some big questions that I have. I don't know how long this is going to go. I've got a bunch of bullet points, so I don't know how long I'm going to spend on either of them. Some I'm going to spend a lot longer than on others. Guys, just smash that like button, subscribe if you haven't yet already. This might end up being a much deeper review than for most of the teams I give this year. But again, this is my YouTube channel, this is my team, so I guess get your own YouTube and make your own video. But if you guys could smash that like button, leave a comment down below, let me know which teams you guys are interested in reviews next, and we'll get into the pros first because I do think that's a good place to start because Manly did return to finals footy in 2024, and I guess the biggest positive I've got to take out of this season is that DCE was our best player once again. The ageless wonder in 2024, he obviously became the most capped Manly player of all time. He also has the most games as skipper, and I've got no doubt he's going to have his name on a grandstand there at Brookie Oval one day. He's entering the twilight of his career, which is quite concerning as a man who would probably say that Cherry Evans is his favourite athlete of all time, and I am seriously praying I get to see him win another comp since 2011 when I was about 10 years old. But what a remarkable player, and I guess Jerome Hughes has been the best halfback this year, but with Nathan Cleary having his injuries, Cherry Evans once again is probably second, at least in the top 3 of halfbacks throughout 2024. He didn't get the chockies for Queensland this year, which is sort of great as a New South Welshman, I will not lie, but he seems to only be getting better, and this was one of his career best years. And as a Manly fan, we haven't had a halfback problem, and when I look at other clubs like the Titans who have continuously had problems in and around their halfback with Fogarty, Sexton, and Ash Taylor, two of which have gone on to leave and also lead other clubs to final success. Manly, for my lifetime following them so closely, haven't had to deal with a halfback issue, and he's my favourite player of all time, so it was great to see him be in the top tier of halfbacks once again, and I'm sure for the 10th year in a row, he's going to finish top 5, top 10 in the Dally M voting. Another player I thought was terrific this year and took their game to another level was olakau'atu, probably my second best player for Manly this year. Really set himself apart and put himself in that top tier category when it came to back rowers in the competition. Angus Crichton was probably number 1 this year. They had a great little battle last weekend where he was definitely our best player in both of the finals games. He wasn't perfect in and around Origin 3 when he got dropped, where he had a few shaky games. Wasn't great against the Cronulla Sharks as well. But throughout the year, our best defender, arguably outside of Jakey, who is our best defender every single year, and I still reckon is the best defensive player in the competition. And really, without Tommy Turbo, a lot of our attack relied on DCE, and Hamole becomes the biggest X factor when Tommy isn't there, which is quite crazy for a back rower. I also cannot forget Luke Brooks, one of the best signings of this year, and I know I've been praising Brooksy a lot, and whether it's a joke, he genuinely had a great year, and it was great to see him play finals footy, which is quite hilarious because it's literally the first year after he's left the Tigers. I thought what was a great sign was early on in the year how well he and DCE looked, and for most of the year they did look very good together, and what's most impressive is that Brooksy started and played 80 minutes in every single game for Manly this year after a 2023 where he's dealing with a lot of hamstring issues, which is great to see. At least Manly got one player all right coming back from a hammy. Maybe I'm wrong here. Tigers fans can let me know different in that comment sections. I would say Brooksy had one of his top 3 seasons, and with all the injuries to the halves for New South Wales before game 1 and how well he was playing at the very start of the year, he almost got put into the Origin conversation. Obviously, he didn't get picked because Jerome Luai came out and saved the state. But anyone who didn't think Brooksy was a good signing for Manly, at least for just 2024, would be kidding themselves. And along with those top 3, we unearthed some serious X factor. I thought Jason Saab, who yes, had an awful game against the Tigers, really improved this year, becoming more of a physical presence, especially coming out of his own end. I'm not saying he's anywhere near a Brian To'o, but he was very, very good. Tommy Talau had his best NRL season by far. Kept a guy like Tolu Kula on the bench, and of course Kula, the moment of our season, that beautiful try to win us that game against the Bulldogs. One of the best moments I've seen watching the mighty Manly Seagulls live with the boys. And of course, most notably, in that back 5, Lehigh Hopewada, who despite probably not looking out of place in PWSA in a year 6 rugby league game, was honestly the best rookie Manly have produced, I'm going to say, since Tommy back in 2016. Whether it was at fullback when he first came in or on the wing, he just showed so much resilience. He never stopped trying. He had 1, maybe 2 bad games. Unfortunately, it did come at the most crucial point of the season, but it's hard to bag a bloke. I remember going back to the game we got bullied by Penrith in Penrith. They made 6 line breaks and Lehigh saved every single try. I'm so excited to what the future is going to bring for Lehigh Hopewada. He looks like he's in a class of skill that only a few rookies we see, not even every single year. And he might end up with the Rookie of the Year with Galvin having to face one of the great bullshit rules that the Dally M unfortunately often brings. But those are the pros for me. They just outline positive things that come out of the year was the return to finals football, DCE, olakau'atu, Brooks, signs of the X Factor with some of our outside backs, and Lehigh Hopewada. There is one more positive, and that is that we flipped the script. A few years ago, we were absolute flat track bullies, but this year we were the only team to knock off the Roosters, the Storm, and the Penrith Panthers. Cowboys, you beat all of those teams when they had their reserve grade sides, so please just shush. Against top 8 teams, we only lost 3 games this year, so those were great signs, which I thought, especially heading into finals when we were going to play those top 8 teams. But unfortunately, that also brings me to one of the big problems with Manly this year, and that was our consistency. So if we had lost/drawn 12 of our games in 2024, and I also just told you guys we only lost the top 8 teams 3 times, that means 9 of our losses/draws were against teams that we finished higher than on the ladder. Not to mention, in 4 of those games, we had double-digit leads, and one of them against the Raiders, we were at home with a 20-0 lead. And if we had just won 2 of those 4 games, we would have been in the top 4 and had 2 cracks at the cherry, which again is very evident to us now that we're in the prelim finals. Every year we get sucked into this fact that maybe a team from outside the top 4 can win the comp. It's just not possible in the modern era. So consistency is one of the big worries I have with Manly, and it's been a problem for a few years now. 2022 and 2023 we struggled with it, and of course this year we massively struggled with finding consistency. We had a great start of the year, had a shaky period around Magic Round and the beginning of Origin, and then we had a great second third of the year, and then things just sort of fell away at the end. We only won 2 out of our last 5 to 6 games, and they were both against the Bulldogs. So when you only lose 3 games to top 8 teams, that should put you in a position to get at least a home final, which we were very close, 1 point off to finishing 6, but you got to get into the top 4. And unfortunately, we just blew that and we pissed that down the drain. So consistency, I would say, is our biggest issue going into next year. You could argue that when it came to the big games, which were the final series, we didn't show up in either of them. I mean, we got the Dogs game, which was an instant classic finals games. The Dogs were the better team, and if we didn't have Cherry Evans to manage us and play off the back foot, we would have got dusted up 13+. When it did matter most, we didn't show up really in either games, and especially we didn't turn up in the middle of the field. And that was the biggest question I had over Manly in the preseason. And there were some positive signs from our forward pack. It wasn't all bad. Nathan Brown was an absolute standout, the best signing bang for buck you could argue in the entire competition. And without him, I think we would have struggled a lot more this year. He came on and changed some games for us. We have a very big forward pack, a lot of props that are the same, like Paseka, Lodge, and Sipley. A lot of those boys play the same way, big power games. So it was good to have a point of difference with Nathan Brown, who also added another dimension to the ball playing in the middle of the field, so we weren't relying as much on Jay. With that being said, though, I'm not sure if Nathan Brown, who is going to be another year older next year, and this now he's got his contract secured. I'm not saying he's not going to be as hungry, but his body, a guy who plays the way Nathan Brown does, can he perform that level for another year? And also, as much as I hate to say it, Jakey is starting to finally slow down. And I love Jakey. I would pay Jakey $1 million till he was 40 and he was playing 20 minutes off the bench, because everyone talks about Cameron Murray, Victor Riley, these young mobile forwards getting rest. Jakey has been playing 80 minutes through some really lean years for about 6 years now. In my opinion, his attacking game isn't great, unfortunately, for the modern era, but he's still the best defensive player in the game, and sometimes you carry a great attacking weapon because his defense isn't as good. When he got the best defensive middle in the competition, I think that you can leverage some attack somewhere else in order to have him in the starting 13. But unfortunately, Jakey is slowing down, and as the leader in the pack, when he's slowing down, and arguably your best forward Nathan Brown, if he can't recapture his form next year, and then of course Matt Lodge, this whole contract situation, it seems that he's going to be leaving the club. He was our best forward in the first finals game against the Bulldogs and at the back end when he recovered from his pec tear. You could be losing a lot of serious star power in your front row, in your forward pack, if Jakey ages once again, which of course he is going to. Nathan Brown, unfortunately, probably I'd love to see him prove me wrong, but I've got some big doubts into whether he can come close to replicating his form next year. And even if he doesn't, he's still good enough to have a place in this side. What really upsets me is Paseka. At the beginning of the year and last year, he was great. We saw signs in round 2. He dominated the Roosters forward pack, ran for 200 meters, A full pack that had JWH, Lindsay Collins, and he was without a doubt the biggest star on the field. And then coming up against Fisher Harris and Leota against Penrith at Brookie this year, he was excellent in those two games, and I thought that could be the catalyst for him to kick on, because no front rower has been able to say that, at least not many. Which other front rower can say that they dominated the Roosters pack and the Penrith Panthers within the same month of each other? That is what Paseka did, but he just never kicked on, and unfortunately he got found out in the biggest games of the year. Against the Bulldogs, he was very quiet. He had a good 5-minute period once we were already on top, and then in the Roosters game, without saying too disrespectful, he was pretty much a ghost out there. Another instance, I'd love to be proved wrong. I've had huge raps, and I think in every preseason prediction I've said Paseka is going to take the next level, and I think he did last year. He just didn't this year, and I think Paseka that we saw in 2024 might just be the best version. If he can replicate that, I guess that can kind of be a success, but Paseka unfortunately is just never going to be, at least in my opinion at this moment, the big dock in a forward pack that wins a competition. When you look at all the best teams, they have a serious gun forward, unless you're the Melbourne Storm, but even they've got Nelson, who on his day is the most destructive middle forward the game's probably arguably ever seen. And then just some of the selections in and around that, it feels like for Manly we're never all firing at the same time. What I mean by that is we got Lodge, we got Paseka, we got Nathan Brown, you got Sipley, and with that you think, oh, there's some good depth there, but they're just never all having good games at once. I didn't even mention Josh Alloway, who I thought was very disappointing this year as well. Like, you read those names and not all of them can fit into this team, so you're like, oh beauty, there's some good depth there, but they're never all firing. One of them's in a bad patch of form and another one's going fire, and then it just switches and swaps throughout the year. The same with the back row as well. Benny Turbo was having a great start to the season, but unfortunately when he falls off, Carl Lawton comes good, and then there's just never an instance when they're just all firing at the same time. And then some of the selections like Seabold puzzles me a fair bit. The fullback situation was really weird this year. Cooler's the backup, so when Tom goes injured, Cooler comes in, then Cooler gets injured, Hopper Wade comes in, but then you keep Cooler at centre, and then Tommy Turbo comes back, but you're going to put him in centre. Drop the fullback who's been playing for us when we've been winning out of the side completely and move the centre back to fullback. But when Cooler gets injured, you move Turbo back there and put Hopper Wade on the wing, and our best winger this year, Talau, to the centres. It's like just a lot of musical chairs with Seabolds, and I did question a lot of those selections throughout the year. And I think, again, that whole point comes back to consistency. Like, I don't think on paper we're a roster that can beat Penrith, the Roosters, and Melbourne consistently. But we proved this year that we can, because we've got DCE, we've got Tommy Turbo, we've got Jake, who still on his day can do something. We've got Paseka, who at least physically could be the most damaging front rower in the competition. We were missing Lachlan Kroger for a big portion of this year as well, so our spine never really got into rhythm this year, so that's a positive, is that hopefully a full preseason again, another year for Cherry and Brooks to combine, maybe they'll go to a new level. But a lot of things went Manly's way this year, and I just think they might have underperformed. Where a lot of people are giving them praise, I still think that with the amount of things that went our way this year, if we just hold on to a couple more leads, we're in the top 4 and we're a serious contender to win the comp. Because I think on paper, especially when it comes to our best players, we should so be in a prelim above the Sharks. But again, the big question, and it's going to be another question going into 2025, is Tommy Turbo. Now the positive is that Tommy Turbo had his best season since 2021, and we saw some games, especially in the second third of the season, where we made that charge to secure our place in finals footy. He had a few games where you just looked at him and thought, this is why this man, who is, when he's fit, without a doubt, undisputedly the best player in the world. But again, does that matter if he only plays 12, 13 games? This was Turbo's second best year when it comes to, at least in my opinion, his production and his availability. And in just another year where he couldn't crack 20 games. Another year where he wasn't available for the New South Wales Blues, when he would be a walk-on. I don't care what anyone else would say. And it leaves Manly in this tricky spot, because you can't move a bloke on like Turbo, but can you afford to keep him on this ridiculous pay packet when he just isn't producing 20 games a year? Like I said, Brooks started and played in every game that was available. Cherry Evans did too, and that guy's 36. Even Jake did, and Jake like he's been tackling the best out of any player in an era where the forwards are faster, stronger, and bigger than they've ever been. And it's also, do we chuck him at centre? Because we didn't get to see what he did fully fit at centre, because Seabold chucked him in there against the Cowboys where he was clearly not 100%, and after 1 week, chucked him back to fullback because the centre who was playing when the fullback was injured and you want to put the fullback back in. And if I'm not making sense right now, it's because how it felt during this whole selection drama. And it really just does feel like Manly's in quicksand, because I can already see next year people are going to have Manly in the 8 because they think Turbo's going to be injured, and the majority of people who understandably don't think Manly's going to be in the 8 because there's so many questions around Turbo, I can understand why they would have him there. And it feels like we've been stuck in this quicksand where we cannot develop because of this bloke, but we can't move him on, because when he's on, we beat anyone in the competition. Even with Turbo, who I don't know what percentage of fit he was, all right? No one does. Only Tommy Turbo knows that. If he's fully fit, do we beat the Doggies? Do we beat the Roosters? Or does it simply just not matter when our forward pack is getting dominated and we have some of the worst discipline we've shown throughout the season? I guess the big question for me is, was this season a success or a failure? It's hard for any footy fan who, especially me at this point, knows how hard it is just to get into finals footy. As this competition, I think, clearly every year separates themselves. It gets harder to get good, and the top 3 teams just solidify their position even more. Anytime you got to get into finals, you take it, and you just got to back your team can do damage there. So I'm obviously going to take a finals berth if you're going to offer it to me. But I think a lot of things went our way this year, and at this point, we've got to learn to adapt when Turbo gets injured. And I think this has probably been the best year that we've done that, and still, we just blew way too many games. We should have been in the top 4, and we absolutely blew it. So Seabold, it seems he has earned a contract extension. That's what all the reports say. He was off in 2025. It looks like he's going to get extended till 2027. I'm just looking at results. I guess you can extend him if he's coming into a contract year, but as someone who has been skeptical about Seabold this whole time, it's hard because he's made Tommy Talau the best version of himself. He's made Luke Brooks the best version of himself. He's improved a guy like olakau'atu, even a guy like Paseka, Nathan Brown. I mean, Seabold's done a lot right. I just think that we can do more. And what really upsets me is he looks so positive after we've lost the semi-final by a 13-plus margin where we weren't even in the game after 1 second of it. I know the start was very unlucky when the biggest star from a week ago to get us into the semis got knocked out, and then your spiritual leader also gets knocked out. No coach plans for that, and a lot of teams wouldn't win from that position except Penrith and Melbourne. So my overall thought is it just sort of feels like we're in the same position we've been in every single year. It's starting to get concerning because I do think this is a win now window, but we're not at the point where we on paper can realistically win a comp when you got your Penrith, you got your Melbournes, and when you got your Sydney Roosters running around. But we still got Turbo and we still got DCE, who on their day I would easily say are 2 of the top 5 players in the entire competition. So as a realist, I'm not going to be a coward. I'm going to say Manly's 2024 season for the expectations I had, considering how many things did go our way. I do think, unfortunately, at the end of the day, it's very disappointing because we should have been in that top 4, and the reason we weren't is because Manly hurt themselves. I think there are some obvious things that can be done next year. I was happy to give Garrick an entire year. I think he's a winger. And looking at a guy like Lomax, there's no reason why Ruben Garrick can't be a better version of what Zach Lomax was this year, because if you're going to disagree with me with that, then literally look at any other year where Ruben Garrick has been objectively a better player than Zach Lomax. I still think Cooler can take his game to the next level. Hopefully that concussion doesn't rattle him too much. I'll be putting him back to the right. I know you want to split up Saab, Cooler, and olakau'atu when it comes to just having the stacked right edge, but I think you need Cooler there defensively with DCE. I'll be moving Garrick back to the wing. I'll be finding a spot to Tommy Talau. I'll be finding a spot
for Lehigh Hopewade. Whether it's just having Lehigh on the bench and as the objectively next fullback to come in for when Turbo inevitably gets injured, because there's just no point being around that bush anymore. Can Nathan Brown recreate this year? Can Paseka take that next step? There are a lot of doubts I have with Manly, because I think we're going to need a lot of things to go our way again next year. I think this year might have been the year, because I don't think Brooks is going to have another year like he had. I'm not sure if DCE is finally going to at least take a bit of a hit to his form. We're halfway through the 2020s now. Manly still haven't won their comp to signify that they can keep this winning comp from the 70s every decade streak going. We're halfway through it now. Can they get it done? It's going to have to be soon, because I tell you what, we're not winning a comp once DCE retires. If we learn anything, is how important sevens are. And when you get a once in a generational, a top tier Hall of Fame halfback, he's going to be really hard to replace. So at the end of the day, there's going to be a lot of positive talk around Manly, but I've got to stick to what I said in the preseason. I do think 2024 was a bit of a disappointment. But ladies and gentlemen, there we have it. Thank you for everyone who would stick around and watch this entire video. Smash that like button, subscribe if you haven't yet already. Leave a comment. Where do you rank Manly going into 2025 at this point? Do you think that they're a contender? Fringe top 8 team? Are they a wooden spoon contender? Let me know. And of course, I'll see you in the next one.